Good morning. It is 7 a.m. and a second day of indirect peace talks between Hamas and Israel are underway, but bombs continue to fall 2 years on from the October the 7th attacks.
Well, here the Prime Minister denounces plans for pro-Palestinian protests today as un-British. We'll speak to the government shortly.
Plus how police smashed the crime gang responsible for extorting almost half the phones stolen on London streets.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of October. 2 years of devastating conflict after a day that destroyed lives and tore the Middle East apart.
They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home.
I'm in southern Israel on the border with Gaza on the second anniversary of October the 7th as the country remembers its dead and those still held captive.
Also ahead, the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick accuses 35 judges of being pro-migrant, claiming he'd sacked them. He'll be speaking at Conservative Party conference later. And UEFA will let Barcelona and AC Milan play league games abroad. Could English clubs be next? Well, today marks exactly 2 years since the October the 7th Hamas attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage when Hamas militants broke out of Gaza and attacked Israel. Since then, tens of thousands of Palestinians and hundreds of Israeli soldiers have died in a war that's torn the whole region apart. We're looking now at footage from the site of the Nova Music Festival, one of the sites attacked on that morning of the 7th of October in 2023. 325 people who were at this music festival died on that day. Now, their relatives have been gathering to pay tribute. And here we can see the scene in Gaza, where there have been at least 2 explosions heard. As you can see, smoke is rising from the detonation of explosives somewhere there in the distance. More than 60,000 people have died in Gaza since those Hamas attacks in 2023. Well, our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, has our first report this morning.
Robert Lifschitz loved his family, his home, and his piano. But then came October the 7th, when he was taken. His home was burnt, and his family was torn apart, the day when everything changed.
The whole kibbutz is waking up every morning to the 7th of October. This is Robert Lifschitz's house. My father-in-law's house.
For Rita Lifschitz, the memories still ring so loudly. Her beloved father-in-law, Oded, lived here on Kibbutz Nir Oz. He was taken hostage on October 7th and held in Gaza, the land you can see from his window. This small kibbutz was overrun. More than 500 fighters came here. Oded and his wife, Yocheved, hid in their bomb shelter.
Our bomb shelter rooms are made for rockets, not for terror. They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side. These are the 2 beds, and this is hurting the heart to see that that is what is left from a couple that's been living together for over 60 years.
Yocheved was released after 16 days. Oded's body was returned earlier this year. More than a quarter of the people in this kibbutz were either killed or taken hostage. Rita was out of the kibbutz when the attackers arrived. When she came home, she was met by devastation. This is her best friend's home. Itzhak was shot, taken hostage, and later died.
If you
At the back of the home, the strong room where Itzhak took shelter. His blood is still on the floor and on the walls. Time is standing still here. The people in this kibbutz lived in the shadow of Gaza. It is there, always on the horizon. This is the view going the other way. The tents are in Gaza, the chimneys are in Israel. Across Gaza, more than 67,000 people have been killed since the October 7th attacks. A UN commission has described the war as a genocide. Saba used to live just over the border from Rita's kibbutz, but she's had to move 13 times since the war began. Saba once lived in a grand house with the trappings of wealth and success. But the last time she saw her home, it had just been bombed.
Personally, I long to go back to the ruins of my house, to sit among the rubble, simply to be there. Even that would be better than this life. At least then I might find a little peace.
But more recently came news. Her home had been targeted once more, and since these photos were taken, it's been targeted again.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home. Your spirit leaves you.
For Saba, this war is not just about what happened on October the 7th, not even about Hamas. It's about generations of struggle and anger, about feeling that Israel is oppressing the Palestinian people.
We are exhausted, broken by what has been done to us. October 7 was just one day, but for us, it has felt like living through hundreds of October 7ths.
In wars, people suffer, not just those who are killed and injured, but those who shoulder the burden of misery. In Gaza and in Israel, the scars caused by October the 7th run deep, and who knows if they will ever truly heal. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, pleased to say we can bring in our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, joining us from Sderot in southern Israel. Great to have you with us, Alex. So what can we expect from the rest of today?
Well, I think this is going to be a very difficult day for Israel and Israelis as they process really what October the 7th meant. They will remember their dead. They will remember the captives still held in Gaza. I'm on the border here in Gaza. And there's also try to understand how it has reshaped the region as well. Remember that we've seen war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. The ramifications of all of that and what it means is still an untold story. In terms of the psychological scars for Israelis, this is the biggest and most deadly attack in the history of the country. It shattered their sense of security. Remember, the State of Israel, created in 1948, is seen by Jews around the world and Jews here as a lifeboat nation, a way of protecting them from years, decades, centuries of discrimination, pogroms that ended in the mechanical slaughter of the Holocaust under the Nazis. And then, of course, there's the Palestinian question. What has this war done to the Palestinians? The damage inside Gaza, absolutely huge. At least 70,000 people killed. That number may rise dramatically. We simply don't know the real number in terms of the death toll. But you should remember, it's not just the anniversary of October the 7th, it's also the anniversary of the military campaign. 2 years to the day of war inside Gaza. We can see smoke on the horizon now. We're hearing the crump of artillery every couple of minutes or so. That war is still continuing, and we don't know at this stage when exactly it will be over. That said, there are negotiations, technical talks taking place in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, and for the first time in a long time, there is optimism that there may be a breakthrough. You may see an end to the bloodshed, hopefully a lasting ceasefire and a return of the hostages to Israel. People are holding their breath. They are crossing their fingers, hoping that the end of the military campaign may be very near.
OK, Alex, for now, in Sorotin, southern Israel, thank you for that. And, of course, we'll have more from Alex and team throughout the day here on Sky News. Well, here, the Prime Minister has condemned plans for pro-Palestinian marches to go ahead at some universities, calling them un-British. Well, our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, is here with us for a bit more on this. Mari, morning to you. So, look, that's what the PM has said. He's written an op-ed in the Times. Take us through the argument that he makes.
So the Prime Minister is trying to argue that today is not the day for these protests, that not only is it the 2-year anniversary of October the 7th, but also it is just a matter of days since the terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester. And therefore, what he's arguing is people need to have a bit more empathy for Jewish people in the UK and what they're going through and the level of grief that they are dealing with. And so in this op-ed in the Times, he starts by saying that the truth is, for far too long, our country has been too indifferent to anti-Semitism. This is not a recent phenomenon, but it is a hatred that has been rising, especially since the atrocities of October the 7th, because we do know there has been that big spike in anti-Semitism since October the 7th. He then goes on to say, on our streets, week after week, as some have exercised their freedom to protest against the Israeli government's actions in Gaza, others have used this as a despicable excuse to attack British Jews for something over which they have absolutely no responsibility. And then later in the piece, he says, this is not who we are as a country. It's un-British to have so little respect for others. And this is really, it's politically contentious because, on one hand, the Prime Minister is saying, please have some respect. This is not an empathetic way to behave. We are expecting protests across the country at universities today, pro-Palestinian protests. The other side of the argument would be tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza since the war began, and actually people should have the right to express their horror and outrage at that level of human loss of life. Now, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, she's also been commenting about this, and she says that if we're honest, the same hatred that fuelled the barbaric attacks of October the 7th, she says, still festers today in the UK. She says we see it in the so-called protests that turned into hate marches on our streets. And then she talks later and she says it was shameful that recognising a Palestinian state, it was a government rewarding terrorists who actually perpetrated those atrocities. And she says appeasement does not work. And she is directly accusing the Labour government of rewarding terrorism at a time when those hostages are still being held in Gaza.
Yeah, and when the indirect talks are ongoing, and one can only hope that those talks bring about a good conclusion. Mari, for now, thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, let me take you through some of the other headlines, or maybe...
Should I do
You'll
that?
do that.
OK, I'll do that. Thank you very much, Kamali. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick will promise to abolish the Sentencing Council to tackle what he claims is two-tiered justice. Addressing the Tory party conference today, Jenrick will set out the plan which would see ministers responsible for setting sentencing policy if the Tories were to be elected. And we'll be speaking to him shortly after 8 o'clock. For the first time ever, renewable energy has produced more of the world's electricity than coal. The think tank Ember looked at data from 88 countries and found solar and wind met rising demand early this year, a major clean energy milestone. These are live pictures now, and it's in the aftermath of 3 passengers being left critically injured after a helicopter crashed onto a motorway in California. The aircraft, which provides emergency medical services, didn't hit near any vehicles as it came down in Sacramento. It happened just after 7 o'clock local time. The city's fire captain says one person was trapped underneath the helicopter. More on that story as we get it. A marine park in Canada has threatened to euthanise 30 beluga whales after the Canadian government blocked the transfer of the mammals to an aquarium in China. Marine Land said it was now too expensive to care and feed for the animals, and if they didn't receive emergency funding, they would have to end their lives. And UEFA says 2 matches in the Spanish La Liga and the Italian Serie A will take place abroad. Villarreal's match against Barcelona in December will take place in Miami. Yes, that's right, Miami, the USA. And the game between AC Milan and Como in February will be played in Perth, in Australia. It still requires approval from a number of federations, but the remaining hurdles, if they're cleared, they'll become the first major European League games to be played in a foreign country. Curious move.
Indeed, it's causing a lot of discussion, certainly around this table this morning. I mean, look, the NFL have been doing this for a few seasons, playing league games abroad. I think this year they've got games in London, Dublin, Madrid and Berlin. It's good for the teams in terms of their shirt sales, basically, and it expands the game. I guess the concern would be the players having to do all that travel and what it actually means for the league, and whether or not the Premier League will one day do it. I mean, would you want to see Arsenal and your boys going across the world to play a game?
Key to my argument with this is that football is also deeply local and deeply linked to community, particularly in Europe. You know, AC Milan fan, do they really want to be travelling to Australia to be part of that match? And
well, they're probably not going to go, are they? So
no, and it's a slippery slope, I think. It's integrity, and once you open the door to that, what's next?
I think that community thing is really important as well, because in the NFL, of course, these are franchise teams. They can move around the cities. They're not actually located in one particular place for hundreds of years, like a team here can be. So it's one to definitely think of.
We're going to move on to another story now. Really interesting, this one. The Met Police have arrested 46 people after disrupting a crime ring suspected of smuggling tens of thousands of stolen phones to Canada. Now, the force launched Operation Echo Steep, it was last year, after a box containing around 1,000 iPhones, almost all of which had been stolen, and it was found near a warehouse near Heathrow Airport. Rachel's here. You've been looking at this story. Extraordinary. A big coup by the Met Police, too.
Yeah. No, I think they'll be really celebrating this morning. It seems to have been the largest operation of its kind by the Metropolitan Police, most likely by any UK police force, as we know that phone theft is a growing and burgeoning epidemic. I mean, we were discussing earlier, I've had my phone stolen twice in this city. I'm sure you guys know people.
I know people who have, no, my cousin had his.
It's so common, and it's not just a problem in London, this is a problem right the way around Europe, because these phones can be shipped abroad. It takes very little work by the criminals, and suddenly they can be unlocked effectively and resold for a huge profit. And obviously these phones are everywhere. We're just walking down the street and you'll see somebody having their phone snatched from their hand, and it's over in a blink of an eye. But this operation by the police, I mean, absolutely staggering numbers. They say they've disrupted a crime ring suspected of smuggling up to 40,000 phones from the UK to China over the past year. That's thought to be up to 40% of all phones stolen in the capital. As you mentioned already, it's starting in December last year. A number of people arrested. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan praising the Metropolitan Police, though he has called on the companies involved here to do more to make it harder to really unlock these phones and making it so easy, as far as he sees it, for these criminals.
Quick thought, Rachel, before we let you go. Is it thought that this is part of some kind of organised plan, rather than it just being sort of, theft of... We can see someone walking down the street with £1,000 in their hand. I
think it's a mixture, but certainly, as far as this is concerned, this organisation are believed to be an organisation with the structure involved. I mean, you think about the numbers involved in that box of phones that was found, 1,000 devices in a warehouse near Heathrow. That's the sort of thing the police have been investigating. Over a fortnight, some 46 arrests were carried out, 11 of them a gang that they believed were robbing delivery vans for the new iPhone 17.
Yikes. All right.
Rachel, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, let's take a look at some of the morning's newspapers now. And we'll start with the I newspaper, which looks at reports on those pro-Palestinian demonstrations we're expecting at universities across the UK today. Here's the Times, which has that letter from the Prime Minister, the op-ed that Mari was just talking about, who says that these protests are un-British. The Guardian has heard from the leader of the Royal College of Nursing, who claims that the government's proposed new rules on visas for foreign workers could harm the NHS. I'm pleased to say we're joined now by Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State for Education. Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much for being with us, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, look, students across the country are going to hold pro-Palestinian protests today. Do you support them?
There is, of course, within our country the fundamental right to protest. It's a cornerstone of our democracy. But my message is that as we remember the awful atrocities that took place 2 years ago on October the 7th, I would just encourage those considering taking part in protests to pause, to reflect and to understand the deep sense of loss that many people in our country will be experiencing today, not least given the appalling attacks we saw in Manchester last week. So my message is that whilst you might have the right to protest, I would urge people to show some humanity, to show some respect, and to understand the deep sense of grief and loss that many Jewish people in our country will be experiencing today.
Secretary of State, that is your message. The Prime Minister has the same message as the Home Secretary. You know there are calls on you to speak to universities about this. Have you done that?
Yes, I've already, in recent months, held roundtable discussions with universities.
This one specifically today?
And I will be in contact with university vice-chancellors on this specifically as well. Okay. I'll be writing to university vice-chancellors, but I have already, over the course of the last year, engaged with vice-chancellors, with Jewish community groups and with others to make sure that we're taking action against anti-Semitism. There can be no place for prejudice, for anti-Semitism or for hatred on our campuses, on our streets or anywhere else within our society.
Well, those conversations haven't elicited the response that you want, have they? Because on the anniversary, 2-year anniversary, October 7th, students are going to be out again today.
Well, as I say, I can only reiterate that given the deep trauma that was experienced on October the 7th, the worst loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and especially in light of what we saw last week in Manchester, my message is that now isn't the time for protests of that kind. And anyone, of course, taking part in a protest must always ensure what they do is lawful, and the police will not hesitate to act should that overstep the mark. OK.
Well, these are lawful, aren't they? I know that there is plans to legislate to try and stop cumulative protests, but even that announcement after the deaths of those individuals at the synagogue, the terror attack on that synagogue, wouldn't actually stop these kind of protests today, would it? Because these aren't cumulative. These are protests that are being held on a specific moment.
We have set out, the Home Secretary has set out what further steps we believe are necessary in order to stop the cumulative impact, which can, cause real challenges for police operations as well. But I have, over the last year, engaged, done significant engagement with our Jewish community, with university vice-chancellors. A key message that I took from that as well was Jewish students saying that they wanted universities to take more seriously their experiences on campus around anti-Semitism. I've been clear with university vice-chancellors that they have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that every student on campus can feel safe, can go about their business and can study without worry of intimidation.
And I'd make the point again that those conversations haven't stopped what's happening today. Do you think Jewish students are safe on campus?
I think when you look at the increase that we've seen in anti-Semitic reports, hate crime reports on campus and elsewhere, I think that sends a very clear message to all of us that there is much more that we need to do to tackle anti-Semitism in our society. And I've heard directly from Jewish students about the impact that this has been having, and that's why it is essential that universities do more and act to protect students.
But today, I mean, students will be going to campus today and seeing these protests. Do you think they're safe today?
Well, university vice-chancellors, university leadership will have to do everything within their power to make sure that that is the case. What can sometimes complicate matters is where protests will take place near universities but not on university grounds. That can make it more difficult for action to happen.
The Prime Minister said that these were un-British. What does he mean by that?
He means that as a country, we've always had a sense of respect, responsibility for one another, and seeking to understand the deep grief that many people in our country, many Jewish people in our country will be experiencing as we remember those who lost their lives in the atrocities of October the 7th, but also following the appalling attack we saw on a synagogue and the loss of life last week. I think the way that we do things in this country is that whilst we have a right to protest, we understand our responsibilities to one another and our responsibilities to demonstrate empathy, compassion and respect, given the grief that many, many people in our country will today be experiencing.
So you should say, can't that be seen through another lens? What about the empathy for the more than 60,000 people who've died in Gaza? The UN have called what's going on there a genocide. What could be more British than standing up for an oppressed people?
I see, as everyone else does, the appalling loss of life in Gaza, the impact that this has on children, the essential need to get in more aid, and that is what we as a government have been focused on. Seeing an end to the war, getting more aid in and securing the release of hostages. But just because you have the right to protest throughout the year doesn't mean you have to protest on every single day of the year. And today, on October the 7th...
No, you've made that point. And
I would just urge people to reflect on that. It is not a question of whether we can understand how people will be feeling on October the 7th. And we can, at the same time, ensure that we take more action, as we are as a government, to get in more aid and to respond to the appalling scenes that we see every single day and the suffering of people in Gaza. And we have, of course, as a government, recognised the Palestinian state as a means to part of that process towards a two-state solution.
Yeah, no, I hear that, but as you'll know, this can be seen through another prism, can't it? And for those who feel solidarity with the people of Gaza, who've seen their homeland completely decimated, seen 60,000 people at least killed, they see that moment as the war began as a moment to pay tribute and to remember those who've lost their lives as well. And don't they have the right to do that?
I share the sense of pain and the deep sense that many people will feel when they see those dreadful scenes on our television where children, innocent civilians, are suffering in Gaza and the urgent need to get aid in. But I would just say that what happened on October the 7th was a terrorist organisation in the shape of Hamas that can have no future in the Palestinian state, and that has been recognised by the Arab League, and we've been clear about that too. We saw a terrorist attack that saw the most significant loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, with hostages who are still held. So as we remember that appalling day 2 years on, I would just ask people to pause and reflect. We can, of course, alongside that, push for more action in Gaza. That is exactly what we're doing as a government.
I don't want to move you on because tomorrow is an important day for you. The deputy leader election opens. I think you're behind at the moment, are you, to Lucy Powell? Why is she doing so much better than you? What would make her a better leader than you in terms of people's opinion? Well,
no one's cast a vote yet, and the voting will commence from tomorrow, but ballots will drop for Labour Party members. I'm standing to be deputy leader of our party, to unite our party, to beat reform, to take the fight to them. But what I will also bring is I'll be a campaigning voice at the cabinet table for members, for our movement, to get things done and, to push on more of the brilliant things that Labour members want to see, especially around tackling child poverty. That will be my #1 priority as Labour's deputy leader. I've already led the work on expanding free school meals to 500,000 more children, our new free breakfast clubs, the huge rollout of government-funded childcare that will make a massive difference. But there is more to do, and that's why I'm seeking a mandate from our members to do more.
I wonder if being around the cabinet table is actually going against you. I mean, you said recently that the 2-benefit cap was devastating. Will you say today that it should be lifted in the budget in November?
Look, I'm clear about what the evidence tells me, and I've always been clear that the 2-child limit is on the table. The difference is I'll be inside government able to push for further action on child poverty. And what I've consistently said is that I can guarantee that by the end of the Parliament, there'll be fewer children in our country in poverty than at the start. It is deeply personal to me. I experienced this growing up. I know the impact it has on children's lives. And the moral mission of my party, the Labour Party, has always been to tackle child poverty. That is the commitment that I give to members, but where I've got a track record of getting things done and making change happen.
OK. Talk to us about this incentive for teacher training to get more teachers into the classroom and get them paid better.
Well, we know the biggest way that you can make an impact to children's learning and their life chances in the classroom is through having brilliant teachers stood at the front of the class. That's why I'm delighted we have made such big progress over the course of the last year with more teachers, 2,300 more teachers in our classrooms, alongside much more work that we've done around retaining more of our brilliant and experienced staff. We all know the teacher. We can all remember the teacher that changed our life. And what I'm announcing today is more financial support to ensure that in some of those key priority subjects, like maths, computing, we've got fantastic teachers. We've actually seen big increases over the last year and people coming forward, but this is about making sure that teaching is a really attractive place for people to come and for people to stay. We've achieved a lot so far as a government, but this is a further step towards 6,500 more teachers over the course of this Parliament.
More work to be done. You've got a few more years left to get to that milestone. Bridget Phillipson, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Good morning to you. All right. Well, still to come this morning. We'll have more from the Middle East as representatives from Israel and Hamas meet for indirect peace talks to end the war in Gaza.
a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started.
This is your chance. Tell people.
This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Then welcome back. Coming up, as Israel marks 2 years since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th, which sparked the war in the region. We'll speak to a British surgeon who has been working voluntarily in Gaza. But first, there you've got our top stories.
Yeah, that's right, Kamali. Today marks exactly 2 years since the October 7th attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage when Hamas fighters broke out of Gaza and attacked Israel. This is the scene this morning at the site of the Nova Music Festival. Relatives of those killed are gathering to pay tribute on the anniversary. And in Gaza, where there have been at least 2 explosions this morning and smoke can be seen rising on the skyline, a second day of talks is taking place in Egypt between Israel and Hamas to free the remaining hostages and end the war. US President Donald Trump says he's hopeful that progress is being made. And the Prime Minister has condemned plans for pro-Palestine protests scheduled today, calling them un-British. Sir Keir Starmer says the planned actions on university campuses show a lack of respect. And then on this programme, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, said universities needed to take action to make sure that Jewish students feel safe.
Well, Security and Defence Analyst Professor Michael Clark has been looking at the repercussions of those Hamas attacks from 2 years ago.
2 years ago, the Hamas atrocity of the 7th of October shocked the world. Mass killing and destruction and reports of gang rape and torture. Hamas terrorists broke through the Israeli security border in several places from north to south across the Strip, and they ran amok. Some 1,200 Israelis were killed, and these are just some of the locations in which Hamas broke through. In particular, they attacked the Nova Music Festival, where many young people were subjected to dreadful ordeals. And many found themselves among the 251 hostages who were taken back into Gaza to be used as human bargaining chips in the deadly game that followed. They became the most visceral issue for Israeli public opinion. The government argued that the best way of getting the hostages back was to liberate them in the fighting, or else pressure Hamas so much they would be forced to hand them over. Well, in the event, 140 hostages were released through international negotiation with Hamas, anathema to Benjamin Netanyahu's own government, and only 5 were recovered alive through the IDF's offensive. It took several days for Israel's security forces to establish control inside their own borders after some intense fighting inside Israel itself. Hamas had launched a well-planned and ingenious attack during the Simchat Torah Jewish festival, catching Israeli security forces completely unaware. They had enough intelligence information to anticipate that something big might happen. They just hadn't joined the dots. Israel's immediate retaliation, of course, was in intensive air attacks. And it was obvious that a large ground offensive was likely. Hamas leaders certainly anticipated one. But it was 3 weeks before the IDF moved into the Gaza Strip in force, both from inside Israel and from the seaward side. It quickly became clear that the IDF was bent on a 2-pronged attack. They first of all attacked in the northern part of the Strip, the most heavily populated section, centred around Gaza City itself. So it would evidently be first a northern, then a southern operation. And after the breakdown of the first ceasefire agreement, they moved into the overcrowded south. The IDF were eliminating Hamas terrorists in large numbers, but the group continued to move around the Strip, making use of its extensive tunnels for miles on end to avoid any convincing defeat. The war certainly didn't come to any swift end, and it created a growing humanitarian crisis across the Strip, which has attracted international condemnation. The war also escalated horizontally to other areas in the region. And meanwhile, Israeli settlers pushed hard to grab more Palestinian land in the occupied territories. And that has become a major problem for Western countries who have traditionally supported Israel. Has fighting an open-ended war in Gaza to eliminate Hamas now turned into an opportunity for Israel's hardliners to achieve their dream of a greater Israel that extends to the Jordan River, that absorbs the whole of the West Bank? The October the 7th attack was the greatest anti-Jewish atrocity since the Holocaust. We all knew immediately that the Middle East would be changed forever by it. But it hasn't been changed in the way Hamas evidently anticipated on the 7th of October.
That's Professor Michael Clark there with his analysis of the situation. Now, those indirect peace talks between Israel and Hamas are taking place in Egypt, and it comes, as we've been saying, 2 years after October the 7th attacks. Well, let's speak now to Professor Nick Maynard, who's a volunteer surgeon for the Medical Aid for Palestinians, who's been to Gaza numerous times. Professor Maynard, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Let's just begin by your reflections on what you saw working in Gaza.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for asking me on. This is a very sad day. We must remember, of course, the tragic, appalling events of October the 7th. But we must also remember what's been happening since then. And I have been out to Gaza on 3 separate occasions over the last 2 years, and most recently returning at the end of July from a spell at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. And I bore witness with my own eyes the appalling humanitarian catastrophe, the genocide that's been carried out. And each time I've been to Gaza, it's worse than it was the time before. And I am encouraged by the peace talk, the negotiations that are going on, and just hope, we all hope and implore that there's a ceasefire as soon as possible.
Now, you say it worsened over the time that you had gone, the 3 different occasions you had gone. Describe for us how it had gotten worse. I mean, was it a lack, an increasing lack of equipment, being able to do your job properly? Was it an increasing ferocity of the fighting? How did it?
It's a mixture of things. I mean, the traumas we saw, the killings of civilians, the appalling injuries from explosive injuries from the bombs, increasingly gunfire and gunshot wounds in young people, the huge numbers of small children I saw who'd been killed and critically injured, and women and men, of course. So the injuries were getting worse each time I was there. But, of course, the lack of resources to treat these patients was getting worse, so we were operating, trying to provide surgical and medical care under the most appalling conditions. And I think the other thing that got inestimably worse over the 2 years has been the malnutrition and the profound effect of the blockade of food and aid going in, the profound effect of the malnutrition on the people there and the ability for them to survive the injuries they were receiving.
Professor, you've been in and out 3 times. Obviously, your colleagues, some of your Palestinian colleagues are there, haven't been able to leave. Give us a sense of how they've been able to do their work. I mean, I presume there are still surgeons there, people who are equivalent to you, who are trying to do the work with absolutely no resource.
Yes, I mean, I go in there for up to 4 or 5 weeks at a time and find it mentally and physically exhausting. Of course, they've been practicing like this for 2 years, so they are on their knees, both physically and mentally. Many of them have been killed, as you know. Many of my friends have been killed, severely injured. There have been more healthcare workers killed per capita population in this military assault than ever before. So I think the healthcare workers are on their knees and struggling against all the odds to provide a humanitarian service for their population.
You said you last came out in July, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, in the early stages of this war, in the first few months of this war, we were sort of counting, paying close attention to which facilities were still operating, which weren't, and there was a decreasing list. It's hard at this stage to know exactly how many facilities are still functional, are still able to treat patients. Give us a sense of where people can go to be treated.
So every single hospital in Gaza has been directly attacked by the Israeli military. I was most recently working in Nasser Hospital, but I've worked in other hospitals during the last 2 years. Nasser Hospital is the last remaining medium to large size hospital. It's the last hospital almost certainly capable of dealing with major trauma. But even Nasser Hospital is functioning at a low level compared to what it used to. It is saturated with patients. It's well over capacity. As I mentioned earlier, the resources are very, very limited, and it's unable to provide the service that it could do prior to October the 7th. And that essentially means that many people will be dying who could otherwise have been saved.
Now, the idea of, say, they attack hospitals because Hamas used them as areas to fight from. They have bases within, underneath. From your time there, did you see Hamas fighters operating from medical facilities?
No, I didn't. And it's disappointing to hear that this is still being raised by the media in our country. The Israeli military claim this, but you will know, as with all other media outlets know, that there has been no verifiable, no credible evidence to support those claims. I have borne witness, as indeed many other healthcare workers have, repeatedly over the last 2 years, that none of us have witnessed any evidence of Hamas militant activity in the hospitals. And I will state again that the evidence from the Israeli spokesman is lacking. There is no verifiable, no credible evidence to support those claims.
Professor, when we look at the potential of this peace deal, we talk about the rebuilding of Gaza. How do you go about rebuilding a healthcare system? I imagine the healthcare system in Gaza was inadequate prior to this because of the Israeli blockade. How do you, going forward, rebuild a healthcare system that is adequate for the millions that live there?
It's a vast task. It's been a very challenging environment for many, many years to provide healthcare, as you quite correctly say. But they managed to provide a very high level of medicine. And indeed, in my specialty is cancer care. I've been going out to Gaza for many years, helping with cancer surgery out there. And they had made great strides in their development of cancer services. That's all been destroyed now. I think the rebuilding of the healthcare system is a mammoth task that the whole world needs to turn to in terms of funding and providing support. But it needs to be led by the Gazan, by the Palestinian healthcare workers. They need to drive the rebuilding with our help.
OK. Professor Maynard, we've run out of time for our conversation, but I really do appreciate you joining us this morning, and hopefully you and I will speak again very soon. Thank you for your time and for your work. Thank you, Professor. All right, I'm going to take you now live to Israel, to the site of the Nova Music Festival, one of the sites that was attacked by Hamas on the 7th of October. We can see here the pictures of those that were killed. Their relatives have come to the site of a music festival where young people were enjoying themselves through the night on the 7th of October when they were attacked by Hamas and other militant groups. 325 people died at the Nova Music Festival on that day, on the 23rd of October. 23rd, in 2023, on the 7th of October. Now, here we have Tel Aviv, where the commemorations continue as Israel marks 2 years since the 7th of October attacks. Well, this, as you can see, is a memorial to mark those who lost their lives on the 7th of October 2023 and perhaps pay tribute to some of those 251 hostages that were taken. Remember, 48 hostages are still being held. It's thought that perhaps 20 of those hostages are still alive, being held in Gaza by Hamas and other terror groups. The talks to bring about an end to this war, indirect peace talks, are underway, with the direction of President Trump to try and bring peace to Gaza. Part of course, those talks, the key demand from Israel and from President Trump is that the hostages are released. That banner there in Hebrew does read, bring the hostages back. There have been near daily, if not weekly, protests in parts of Israel demanding exactly that, demanding settlements to this war. For the past few months at least, saying that the war has gone on for too long, calling on the Israeli government to bring about an end to this war, find a settlement, find a way to bring those hostages home. As I say, 251 were taken on that day, 48 it's thought remaining there, 20 of whom remain alive. We're seeing pictures here of some of the hostages as families of those hostages hold that banner up 2 years on from their loved ones being taken, demanding that they are brought home. And here we see Gaza, a tent city, the Gaza Strip, home to some 2 million people prior to this war. That number greatly reduced. People forced to leave their homes following the Israeli onslaught. Some 60,000 people at least thought to have died. An Israeli general saying just a month or so ago that their figures suggest 10% of Gaza's population has been killed. Gaza, whose people want to see an end to this war as much as anyone else on this day, 2 years on, remembering that moment as well as remembering all of those who have been lost as those peace talks continue in Egypt. The hope being that that will bring an end to the fighting. As you can see on the horizon there, smoke continues to rise as explosions have been heard in Gaza today.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. Now, British passport holders travelling to the European Union will soon start to have their fingerprints and facial biometrics taken. It's the new system. It's actually being rolled out on Sunday. Let's speak to Simon Calder, travel editor for The Independent. Great to have you with us, Simon, as always. Just bring viewers up to speed then. Tell us all about these changes.
OK, well, there's no surprise to these changes because when we voted to leave the European Union, we were already involved in the so-called entry-exit system. This is a digital borders scheme, and the idea is that the European Union and the wider Schengen area will keep tabs on everybody who's going in and out of the Schengen area. So exactly as you say, starting on Sunday, some British travellers will have their fingerprints taken. They will also have a facial biometric, and that is crucially in addition to the normal checks that you get. You will know the standard thing. They will check your passport details. They'll stamp your passport. If they're doing their job properly, they will also count the number of days you've been in the European Union to see if you've outstayed your welcome. So it's an extra layer of red tape that's coming in, but it's crucial to understand that you don't need to prepare anything in advance. The so-called Euro visa won't be with us for another year, and you're not going to have to pay any money. You just need to be prepared to be patient because those queues are going to get longer.
Yeah, I was going to talk about those queues. When I'm heading to Rome in half-term, Simon, what will it mean for me and my family in terms of queues? And also, you mentioned it will only be some people that will be picked up on these biometric data changes. Why is that?
Because the European Union is giving everybody 6 months to roll this out. So it starts on Sunday, the 12th of October. The actual rollout doesn't finish until the 9th of April next year. And the idea is that each country can decide how quickly they want to do it. Now, I've contacted all 29 of the nations involved, and some of them, specifically the Czech Republic, Estonia, Luxembourg, say, yep, we're going to be ready from day one. Everybody travelling in and out is going to be checked. I mean, they're in a relatively easy position because they've only got air borders. But here in Spain, for instance, they say, yep, on Sunday, we're going to check exactly one flight coming into Madrid airport. After that, we're going to roll things out gradually at the international airports, then the road frontiers, then the seaports. So they're doing things very slowly. And everywhere else, it's going to be kind of some places will try to check everybody. For instance, Düsseldorf Airport in Germany, that's going to be their first place. But I tell you what, if the queues build up, then they are allowed to say, oh, it's all got a little bit too much, so we're going to let up to 90% of those Brits, and indeed other nationalities such as Americans, Australians, Venezuelans, we'll let them go through just the normal check if they want to stop the queues building up. But the idea is that, yeah, October half-term will probably be the first big test of this, and then after that, Christmas, Easter and so on. But then by next April, the whole idea is that it will all be digital, and the European Union says things can only get better after that. It will be faster and easier and more secure.
OK, we'll leave it there. Simon Calder, thanks so much. Definite sign that I need to get my Italian passport.
Got to get yourself sorted. I hope you enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
Nice. I'm going to Rome for half-term. I was going. Right, let's take a look at the day's weather. Well, it's the next couple of weeks look relatively settled, although there will be strong winds and rain at times, mainly over northern and western parts. It's mild, breezy and cloudy now with patchy rain from the southwest of Ireland into Scotland. Elsewhere, mostly dry, but the southwest of Britain does have some drizzle. Northwest England and southeastern parts of both Northern Ireland and Ireland will see rain later this morning, while northern Scotland and the northwest of Ireland will brighten up. Most other places will be dry with sunny spells. Temperatures look around average, but expect there to be a bit of a chilly breeze. Well, stay with us here at Sky News Breakfast as we continue our coverage 2 years on from the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October. We are looking here at the site of the Nova Music Festival, a festival held on that day as thousands of young people gathered to be together enjoy themselves at a music festival. 325 of them did not return home after Hamas attacked that festival. We'll have the very latest from the region in the next hour.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
It is 8 a.m, a second day of indirect peace talks between Hamas and Israel, but bombs still fall 2 years on from the October the 7th attacks.
Here, the Prime Minister denounces plans for pro-Palestinian protests today as un-British.
Plus, how police smashed the crime gang responsible for extorting almost half the phones stolen on London streets.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of October. 2 years of devastating conflict after a day that destroyed lives and tore the Middle East apart.
They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home.
I'm in southern Israel on the border with Gaza on the second anniversary of October the 7th as the country remembers its dead and those still held captive.
The Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has accused 35 judges of being pro-migrant, saying he'll sack them. We'll speak to him in the next few minutes from Conservative Party conference. And UEFA says that Barcelona and AC Milan can play games abroad. Could English football clubs be next? Well, it's exactly 2 years since the October the 7th attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage when Hamas broke in to Israel out of Gaza. Since then, tens of thousands of Palestinians and hundreds of Israeli soldiers have been killed, and the war has torn the entire region apart. Israel is commemorating at this moment today. This is the site of the Nova Music Festival, one of the sites attacked by Hamas on that morning in 2023. Some 325 festival goers, young people who had been at that festival through the night, never returned home. And people are also gathering in the city of Tel Aviv in Dizengoff Square, which has also been known as Hostage Square, holding here banners calling for the hostages to be freed. It is thought that around 48 hostages are still held. 20 of them are thought to be alive. As you can see from the banner there on the right, it's calling on President Trump to end the war. And here in Gaza, a scene of devastation, tent city, as hundreds of thousands have been forced to leave their homes by the fighting. Estimates that about 60,000 have been killed, but that number will be far higher. An Israeli general saying that 10% of Gazans had been killed as a result of the war there since the 7th of October. And as you can see on the horizon, smoke continues to rise this morning as the fighting seems to be continuing. There are indirect peace talks, as we say, going on right now between Israel and Hamas in Egypt. Well, our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, has our first report this morning.
Robert Lifschitz loved his family, his home, and his piano. But then came October the 7th, when he was taken. His home was burnt, and his family was torn apart, the day when everything changed.
The whole kibbutz is waking up every morning to the 7th of October. This is Oded Lifschitz's house. My father-in-law's house. He is.
For Rita Lifschitz, the memories still ring so loudly. Her beloved father-in-law, Oded, lived here on Kibbutz Nir Oz. He was taken hostage on October 7th and held in Gaza, the land you can see from his window. This small kibbutz was overrun. More than 500 fighters came here. Oded and his wife Yocheved hid in their bomb shelter.
Our bomb shelter rooms are made for rockets, not for terror. They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side. These are the two beds, and this is hurting the heart to see that that is what is left from a couple that's been living together for over 60 years.
Yocheved was released after 16 days. Oded's body was returned earlier this year. More than a quarter of the people in this kibbutz were either killed or taken hostage. Rita was out of the kibbutz when the attackers arrived. When she came home, she was met by devastation. This is her best friend's home. Itzhak was shot, taken hostage, and later died. At the back of the home, the strong room where Itzhak took shelter. His blood is still on the floor and on the walls. Time is standing still here. The people in this kibbutz lived in the shadow of Gaza. It is there, always on the horizon. This is the view going the other way. The tents are in Gaza, the chimneys are in Israel. Across Gaza, more than 67,000 people have been killed since the October 7th attacks. A UN commission has described the war as a genocide. Saba used to live just over the border from Rita's kibbutz, but she's had to move 13 times since the war began. Saba once lived in a grand house with the trappings of wealth and success. But the last time she saw her home, it had just been bombed.
Personally, I long to go back to the ruins of my house, to sit among the rubble, simply to be there. Even that would be better than this life. At least then I might find a little peace.
But more recently came news. Her home had been targeted once more, and since these photos were taken, it's been targeted again.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home. Your spirit leaves you.
For Saba, this war is not just about what happened on October the 7th, not even about Hamas. It's about generations of struggle and anger, about feeling that Israel is oppressing the Palestinian people.
We are exhausted, broken by what has been done to us. October 7 was just one day, but for us it has felt like living through hundreds of October 7ths.
In wars, people suffer, not just those who are killed and injured, but those who shoulder the burden of misery. In Gaza and in Israel, the scars caused by October the 7th run deep, and who knows if they will ever truly heal. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, our international correspondent Alex Rossi is in southern Israel and sent us this a short time ago.
Well, I think this is going to be a very difficult day for Israel and Israelis as they process really what October the 7th meant. They will remember their dead. They will remember the captives still held in Gaza. I'm on the border here. And there's also try to understand how it has reshaped the region as well. Remember that we've seen war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. The ramifications of all of that and what it means is still an untold story. In terms of the psychological scars for Israelis, this is the biggest and most deadly attack in the history of the country. It shattered their sense of security. Remember, the State of Israel, created in 1948, is seen by Jews around the world and Jews here as a lifeboat nation, a way of protecting them from years, decades, centuries of discrimination, pogroms that ended in the mechanical slaughter of the Holocaust under the Nazis. And then, of course, there's the Palestinian question. What has this war done to the Palestinians? The damage inside Gaza, absolutely huge. At least 70,000 people killed. That number may rise dramatically. We simply don't know the real number in terms of the death toll. But you should remember, it's not just the anniversary of October the 7th, it's also the anniversary of the military campaign. 2 years to the day of war inside Gaza. We can see smoke on the horizon now. We're hearing the crump of artillery every couple of minutes or so. That war is still continuing, and we don't know at this stage when exactly it will be over. That said, there are negotiations, technical talks taking place in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, and for the first time in a long time, there is optimism that there may be a breakthrough. You may see an end to the bloodshed, hopefully a lasting ceasefire and a return of the hostages to Israel. People are holding their breath. They are crossing their fingers, hoping that the end of the military campaign may be very near.
That's Alex Rossi reporting. Of course, we'll have more from Alex and our team in the region throughout the day. Well, here, the Prime Minister has condemned plans for students to hold pro-Palestinian protests at some universities today, calling them un-British. Well, our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, is here with a bit more on this. So, Mari, this has all come, morning to you. This has all come from an op-ed that the PM wrote in the Times this morning. Yeah, absolutely. So the PM's come out and arguably slightly perhaps attacked those who are planning on protesting today. And you say he was calling it un-British. Mm-hmm. He's talked about how we've been indifferent to anti-Semitism in this country for far too long, that it's permeated our whole society. He's talked about how much anti-Semitism has spiked since October the 7th, the attacks 2 years ago. And he said that actually it was un-British to have so little respect
for others at a time where British Jews are feeling unsafe, are reeling from that terrorist attack in Manchester, and of course then the commemorations today for October the 7th. And he said that some people would use it as a despicable excuse to attack British Jews. It was a total loss of empathy and humanity, he said. And then you were speaking to Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, today, and she was trying to explain, really, why the government's position is what it is, and to an extent slightly warning protesters in terms of breaking the law or supporting Palestine action or anything that might be deemed illegal. We can have a listen to her comments now.
Given the deep trauma that was experienced on October the 7th, the worst loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and especially in light of what we saw last week in Manchester, my message is that now isn't the time for protests of that kind. And anyone, of course, taking part in a protest must always ensure what they do is lawful, and the police will not hesitate to act should that overstep the mark.
So Bridget Phillipson there trying to warn people to stay within the law, encouraging them not to do it at all today, but if they are going to protest, then to do it legally and lawfully. What was also interesting was you asked her directly, are Jewish students safe on university campuses today? And she wouldn't answer the question, which I thought was really fascinating, and for many Jewish viewers will be quite concerning. And the fact that she couldn't answer that question suggests that there is a sense of fear and concern in government that perhaps they aren't safe. And then Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party in the opposition, she's been talking this morning about the commemorations as well, and really talking about how the hatred for Jewish people is still festering in the UK today, and really concerned about that. And she's also attacking the Labour government, saying that their decision to recognise a Palestinian state was a reward for terrorism. And she kind of ends her statement by saying appeasement does not work.
Okay, Maureen, for now, thank you for that. All right, well, Leah, you're here. You've got our headlines, I think.
Yeah, I've got a story about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his company Ineos.
Yeah,
it's not great news, I'm afraid. It's announcing it will cut 60 jobs at a plant in Hull, blaming high energy costs and dirt-cheap imports from China. The government acknowledged that it's a tough time for the chemicals giant, blaming high gas prices on the war in Ukraine. More on that story. It's developing, of course. We'll bring that to you. Elsewhere, though, 3 passengers have been critically injured after a helicopter crash onto a motorway in California. Now, the aircraft, which provides emergency medical supplies, it didn't hit any vehicles when it came down in Sacramento. It all happened at 7 o'clock local time. More than 200 hikers left stranded by a blizzard on Mount Everest are being rescued. Heavy snow trapped hundreds over the weekend. Another 350 people have already been rescued. A marine park in Canada has threatened to euthanise 30 beluga whales after the Canadian government blocked the transfer of the mammals to an aquarium in China. So Marineland said this: it was too expensive, they're saying, to care and feed for the animals. If they didn't receive emergency funding, they would have to end their lives. And UEFA say 2 matches in the Spanish La Liga and Italian Serie A will be taking place abroad. Villarreal's match against Barcelona in December will take place in Miami in the States, and the game between AC Milan and Como in February will be played in Perth, Australia. It still requires a bit of approval from a number of federations, but if the remaining hurdles are clear, they'll become the first major European League games to be played in a foreign country.
Right, let's go to Manchester now, and we can bring in the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, joining us from Party Conference. Robert Jenrick, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us this morning. Your leader, Kemi Badenoch, has said that these protests that we're going to see at universities today should not be going ahead. We heard from Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, saying that she doesn't want them to go ahead. The Prime Minister wrote it in the paper as well this morning. I think they're going to go ahead. Do you want to see students arrested if they protest today?
Well, I think these protests are an absolute disgrace. This is October the 7th. This is the day in which we should be mourning with those who are mourning. We should be commemorating the appalling terrorist attack by Hamas, and we should be calling with one voice for the remaining hostages to be released as quickly as possible and a peaceful resolution found to this terrible situation. These protests are frankly anti-British, and my message to anyone considering going on them is do not stay at home, show some common decency to your fellow British citizens today. And yes, if anybody on those protests breaks the law by lionising prescribed terrorist organisations like Hamas or Hezbollah or Palestine Action, the police should come down on them like a ton of bricks. They should be arrested. They have no place in British society or on the streets of our country.
You used the phrase as well that the Prime Minister used about them being anti-British. Let me just press you on that, because what can be more British than a group of people going out today, 2 years on from people in Palestine being the subject of a war that's seen at least 60,000 killed. The United Nations call it a genocide. They're going out in solidarity.
I'm going to correct you there. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's not 2 years on from people in Palestine being subject to a war. It's 2 years on from Hamas launching a deadly terrorist attack against the people of Israel. That is what we're remembering today. It is hundreds of innocent Israelis being murdered, raped, and kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. That is the thing we should be thinking about today. Of course, we all want to see peace in the Middle East. This is a terrible situation, but it is the hostages and the victims of the October the 7th terrorist attack that we should be thinking about today.
Can people hold the two things in their heads at once? And do you think that people can, while condemning those attacks, also show solidarity with those within Palestine?
Of course people can, and I've been so clear about this. We all want to see peace in the Middle East. The loss of life is absolutely tragic at the moment, and that's got to come to an end. There is now, fortunately, a peace deal on the table that's been brokered by the United States with allies throughout the Middle East. Hamas, who seem to be holding out, need to come to the table now, agree the final details of that deal, bring the conflict to an end, and above all, get the remaining hostages home to their families and loved ones. That's what we need to see. But look, if anyone thinks that it is British to go out on the streets on a day like today, I'm afraid they are living in a different country to me. That is not the Britain that I want to see. Those people need to show some common decency and stay at home today.
OK. Before we talk a little bit about what you're going to say at conference, I want to play you a bit of yourself, actually, Robert Jenrick, from a recording that's been published in a newspaper this morning. We'll play it. It's about Britishness, and then we'll talk on the other side.
The other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives.
That's you talking about Handsworth as you went there to film a video. Just expand a little more on what you're saying there in that audio, Robert.
Well, look, I don't resile from those comments. I want to live in a country which is well integrated. I want people to be living side by side. I never want to see segregated or even ghettoised communities. We want people of all skin colours, of all religions, to be living in harmonious, well-integrated communities with our kids growing up alongside each other. And I'm afraid in some parts of the country, there are communities where that just isn't the case. And parts of Handsworth in Birmingham, where I was earlier the year, a place I know quite well growing up in the West Midlands, just don't resemble that. And that makes me very worried. We need to have an honest, open conversation in this country about integration, because it hasn't gone well in recent years. You know, in the last 20 years, there's been at least 6 major reports by governments of all political persuasions about this challenge, and yet enough has not been done to try to tackle it. And so the remarks that you just played were me speaking to people in the West Midlands about my genuine concerns for that and how we can begin to resolve it.
Well, there's your genuine concerns, as you say, but you were there for 90 minutes. Now, Andy Street, who was mayor of the West Midlands for 7 years, heard those things and said that you're just flat wrong. He says that the area is integrated. He's a Conservative former Metro mayor as well. So why is he wrong and you right?
Well, look, I respect Andy, but I disagree with him on this issue. I do know the West Midlands well. I grew up down the road in Wolverhampton. I went to university in Birmingham, so I know the area well myself. And the concern I have in that community and in others across the country, because it's not just about one place. That was an example because I was speaking nearby, is that we're not living in a country which is as well integrated as...
OK, you've used this word integrated as well as the one that I'm interested in.
May I just make this point, if I may? There are real dangers.
Go on.
There are real dangers. If we don't live in a well-integrated community, then this can lead to serious, serious challenges. Look, just the other day here in Manchester, we saw a man who had lived in this country for 30 years, but was clearly not integrated into our society, clearly did not share British values, committing an appalling terrorist attack by going to a synagogue and killing British Jews. That is at the extreme level where failures of integration lead. And that's why we've got to have a debate about this and not have it shut down whenever anyone puts their head above the parapet and talks about it publicly.
I do wonder what integrated means for you, and I wonder how you can judge that a person is integrated by the colour of their skin, being there for 90 minutes.
Well, look, I was very clear that it's not about the colour of your skin or the faith...
You didn't see any white faces, and that's what made you feel like it wasn't integrated.
The point that I was making is we want all people to be living side by side. We can't have particular communities in this country where there's a heavy preponderance of one group or another. We want people to be living in mixed communities, don't we? I mean, I don't know about you, but that's what I want to see in this country. That's the kind of country I want my kids to be growing up in.
Robert Jenrick,
you know, there's huge strengths in that. But we mustn't have
we don't have loads of time.
growing
some more points.
communities where people are living essentially ghettoised lives.
Okay.
That is a bad place for our country to be in.
It is. And Robert Jenrick, you know that kind of language, I mean, you said you're putting your head above the parapet, but you'll know that kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself trying to shut down...
What did I do wrong?
Legitimate
I'm not shutting you down, Rob, but we've been talking about it for at least 5 minutes.
It is, because what you are implying is that you can't say comments like that. And if we live in a country where politicians or members of the public cannot debate whether there is due integration or not, then that does give fuel for extremists. That does give rise to the far right. So you must not take fair and reasonable comments and try and use them to shut down a debate that this country needs to have. We have been having this debate off and on for decades, and every time people try and raise these issues in a fair and reasonable way, with all due respect, journalists like you pop up and try and knock those people down. And that is the reason why we don't live in an integrated country.
It's not my opinion necessarily,
is the reason why,
Robert, because it's also
the reason why
the mayor
terrorist attacks
of the West
happen,
Midlands said, Andy
because
Street,
people are
you were
not
wrong.
stepping up and taking the action that's needed.
Andy Street said that you were wrong as well, but we can move on from that, if you like. Now, you're going to be talking today about changes in the judiciary. You want to get rid of the sentencing council, and you also want to return back to the power of the Lord Chancellor, the power to appoint judges. Is that going to mean that we're going to have like a US-style system where we'll have judges who are political appointees?
No, absolutely not. Look, this is returning to the world as it was before Tony Blair and Gordon Brown changed our constitution, I would argue vandalised our constitution 20 years ago or so. What we want to see is the independence of the judiciary upheld. And that means rooting out those activist judges, the minority of activist judges that we are seeing in our country at the moment, and ensuring the independence can be restored. I'm afraid we've uncovered a small number, but nonetheless a meaningful number of judges who are doing things which give the public rise to think, are they really independent? Let me give you some examples. Judges who are trustees or supporters of Open Borders charities. judges who've taken to social media to like or retweet posts which suggest that they are supporting changes in the law or whether the government wins or loses cases in the courts. That's not right. That risks the appearance of political activism. And so what I want to do is protect the independence and the respect of the judiciary by returning to the system as it was and ensuring that we weed out those judges who really are politicians rather than independent jurists.
Okay.
And we can ensure that the public confidence in the judicial system is restored once again.
And Robert Jenrick, I'm sorry to keep you, but just one last question as well to you, because you spoke to our Sam Coach yesterday saying that a pact with reform wasn't a priority. Could it be a priority later? You'll know that Conservative Party members want to see that happen, especially under your leadership.
No, look, what we all want to see is the Conservative Party get back into business, and that means changing the Conservative Party, learning the mistakes of the past, ensuring that we have serious answers to the big challenges facing the country, like getting the economy going again so people can feel better off, or securing our borders and ending the fast of the small boats crisis. And by doing that, make the Conservative Party once again the natural home for small C Conservatives, so we can win back the millions of people.
You know, the polls suggest that you would be more popular among members.
No, look, Kemi is our leader. We had a leadership contest a year ago. That was settled, and I'm fully supporting her. I wouldn't be serving in the shadow cabinet if I didn't think that she was the right person to be leading our party and ultimately our country forward in the years ahead.
Robert Jenrick, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, our political correspondent Mari Aurora is here with us. Robert Jenrick, they're saying he doesn't resolve from those words about Handsworth. Now, you're from Birmingham. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on and get your sense of it. I put it to him that Andy Street, the mayor of the city for 7 years, just thinks he's flat wrong.
Yeah, so there clearly is a dispute or a difference of opinion in Conservative circles around what Robert Jenrick said back in the springtime when he said he didn't see a white face in Handsworth for 90 minutes. And as you say, Andy Street, who obviously was the mayor of Greater Manchester, absolutely not the West Midlands, I should know better than that, has said that's just not the case. And the difficulty is that Robert Jenrick is arguing, he is trying to make a point around the questions around integration and whether we need to have more of a conversation, an open conversation about different communities that might be kind of siloed into areas or groups. And therefore, he was suggesting that suggests people are not mixing in the way that he would like to see. And he was wanting to say, I want to see my children grow up with, you know, everybody, essentially, and not separate communities. And Kemi Badenoch, his leader, has also been defending him this morning on the airways, saying he's trying to make a comment about integration, not about race. The question, I suppose, that remains is if Robert Jenrick were in a different area, a white area, would he have been as alarmed if he didn't see a brown face? And I think that's the question that people are asking themselves this morning. He's arguing he's trying to make a fair point and trying not to shut down debate. Other people would argue he's trying to be perhaps politically contentious to make headlines.
Some may argue that indeed. Right, Mari, for now, thank you for that. Well, let's go to Manchester. Our other political correspondent, Amanda Acas, is standing by. We're so lucky to have both of you available to us this morning. Amanda, give us a sense of what you heard from Robert Jenrick and what we can expect to hear from him later.
Yes, so, well, he's committing news this morning, isn't he? Certainly with those comments on integration and extremism and suggesting that the radicalisation of Jihad al-Shami, the perpetrator of those attacks on the synagogue, was a failure of integration of the most extreme kind, considering we still don't really know the full details about what happened. I think that's something that will certainly be picked up, as Mari was just talking about, his broader comments about the situation in Handsworth as well. But today is Law and Order Day at the Tory party conference, so this is Robert Jenrick's big moment, along with Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, both making big speeches at conference. And they've come out with a whole series of pretty controversial announcements about reforms to the judicial system. So they're pledging to to abolish the Sentencing Council to give ministers greater say over the way sentences are handing out in a bid to fight back against what they describe as two-tier justice system. We'll go into that a bit more in a moment, as well as cracking down on what, again, they're describing as activist judges, saying there is a rot in the judiciary that they need to root out. Again, this will be pretty controversial, seen as a bit of an attack on the independence of the judiciary. But after so long without much in the way of kind of concrete policies, here we have the Tories with this kind of continuing this kind of blitz of headline-grabbing announcements. So the issue around sentencing, now this is one that hit the headlines earlier this year when it emerged that the Sentencing Council was advising judges to commission reports in order to take into account someone's ethnicity, their gender, their faith, when considering the sentences to be imposed on individuals in the courts. And this was originally done because it was observed that, for example, white men tended to have shorter sentences than people from other backgrounds. So the idea was to kind of correct that disparity, caused a lot of controversy along this kind of claim of a two-tier justice system, which the Tories claimed at the time was discriminating particularly against white Christian men. The then Justice Secretary, now Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, also said she was shocked by this, and she effectively overruled the Sentencing Council and took over that power for herself. So that power for the kind of government to overpower the Sentencing Council already exists, but the Tories really wanting to make a big focus on that today.
OK, Amanda, for now, thank you so much for that. More from you, of course, throughout the day. From Conference. All right, still to come. On the Breakfast programme, 2 years on from the October the 7th attacks, we'll speak to an Israeli soldier who was called up for duty just moments after receiving news that the attack was underway.
We arrive, a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Welcome to the breakfast float. We've got all of the day's top stories coming up next. Leah.
I've got your top stories now. Just to recap your Tuesday morning, today marks exactly 2 years since the October 7th attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage when Hamas fighters broke out of Gaza and attacked Israel. This is the scene this morning in Tel Aviv. Families of the hostages are gathering to remember their loved ones and demand the return to those still alive. And then in Gaza, where there's been at least 2 explosions this morning and smoke can be seen rising on the skyline, a second day of talks is taking place in Egypt between Israel and Hamas to free the remaining hostages and end the war. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he's hopeful that progress is being made. Back here, the Prime Minister has condemned plans for pro-Palestine protests scheduled today, calling them un-British. Sir Keir Starmer says the planned action shows a lack of respect.
Well, security and defence analyst Professor Michael Clark has been taking a look at the repercussions of the October the 7th attacks.
2 years ago, the Hamas atrocity of the 7th of October shocked the world. Mass killing and destruction and reports of gang rape and torture. Hamas terrorists broke through the Israeli security border in several places from north to south across the Strip, and they ran amok. Some 1,200 Israelis were killed, and these are just some of the locations in which Hamas broke through. In particular, they attacked the Nova Music Festival, where many young people were subjected to dreadful ordeals, and many found themselves among the 251 hostages who were taken back into Gaza to be used as human bargaining chips in the deadly game that followed. They became the most visceral issue for Israeli public opinion. The government argued that the best way of getting the hostages back was to liberate them in the fighting, or else pressure Hamas so much they would be forced to hand them over. Well, in the event, 140 hostages were released through international negotiation with Hamas, anathema to Benjamin Netanyahu's own government, and only 5 were recovered alive through the IDF's offensive. It took several days for Israel's security forces to establish control inside their own borders after some intense fighting inside Israel itself. Hamas had launched a well-planned and ingenious attack during the Shimhat Torah Jewish festival, catching Israeli security forces completely unaware. They had enough intelligence information to anticipate that something big might happen. They just hadn't joined the dots. Israel's immediate retaliation, of course, was in intensive air attacks. And it was obvious that a large ground offensive was likely. Hamas leaders certainly anticipated one. But it was 3 weeks before the IDF moved into the Gaza Strip in force, both from inside Israel and from the seaward side. It quickly became clear that the IDF was bent on a 2-pronged attack. They first of all attacked in the northern part of the Strip, the most heavily populated section, centred around Gaza City itself. So it would evidently be first a northern, then a southern operation. And after the breakdown of the first ceasefire agreement, they moved into the overcrowded south. The IDF were eliminating Hamas terrorists in large numbers, but the group continued to move around the Strip, making use of its extensive tunnels for miles on end to avoid any convincing defeat. The war certainly didn't come to any swift end, and it created a growing humanitarian crisis across the Strip, which has attracted international condemnation. The war also escalated horizontally to other areas in the region. And meanwhile, Israeli settlers pushed hard to grab more Palestinian land in the occupied territories. And that has become a major problem for Western countries who have traditionally supported Israel. Has fighting an open-ended war in Gaza to eliminate Hamas now turned into an opportunity for Israel's hardliners to achieve their dream of a greater Israel that extends to the Jordan River, that absorbs the whole of the West Bank? The October the 7th attack was the greatest anti-Jewish atrocity since the Holocaust. We all knew immediately that the Middle East would be changed forever by it. But it hasn't been changed in the way Hamas evidently anticipated on the 7th of October.
That's Professor Michael Clark there with his analysis. Well, let's speak now to Jonathan Harbour, paratrooper with the Israeli Defence Forces. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us this morning on what must be a very difficult day for you, your family and your wider community. You were there on October the 7th. You were called up. Describe those first moments.
First, I want to say thank you for having me. And I want to say that I'm here part of the Stand With Us UK delegation. Stand With Us UK is a charity that educates about Israel. So my 7 October morning was basically what I was trained to all my life in the army. I was basically trained for the call when my country, my people, my friends needs me. And that morning I got my phone call. I just went home, I didn't think, took my stuff, and went to base to get ready for a mission. Our mission was to go to a village town called Kfar Aza. It's a beautiful village next to Gaza border. And our mission was to go house to house to save life. We went house to house, tried to rescue civilians from the terrorists that came into Israel. I want also to say that it wasn't only organized Hamas terrorists that came inside Israel land. Also, many Gaza civilians came into Israel land as part of the massacre.
Okay. So you received a phone call from like your commanding officer. I mean, talk to us about your time in the army. Are you a reservist? Are you a fully commissioned officer? What's your...
Right now I'm in the reserves. In 7 October I was in the reserved army. I got my phone call as a civilian. I didn't been in the army for about 3 years before that. Just got my phone call. That was we trained for the Israeli IDF army. From civilians, it's the civilians serve the army. We don't have, it's not like United States that it's a job. Everyone is mandatory to go to the army for 3 years. And you need to be on the call till you're 40. You need to be ready to go and serve the country and protect your people whenever they call you. No ask questions, you don't think, you just, that's what we were trained for. We see the fire around inside, and we're just thinking about how we can save life fast as possible.
And you're 25, this was a couple of years ago, so you're even younger then, and you've been in the army for all that time. I mean, it's a very early part of your life to have that kind of life experience. Have you had chance, I mean, the war is still ongoing, have you had chance to reflect on the impact that's going to have on you and your life?
I think every day is a challenge. War, it's not something humanity and people and young people like me and my friends need to see. It's harsh, it's hard, but that's our job. That's what we need to do to have a better place, a better world one day. We want to, obviously I want peace, yeah? But for me and my children to have a better world to our Jews, not only in Israel, all over the world, and a safer place, that's a job we need to do, and we need to save lives, and that's what we did in that day.
You'll know that some of your colleagues in the IDF now feel like much of the fighting needs to come to an end. Are you of that agreement as well, that this is now the time to stop the fighting?
I want to say that I'm not here to talk about politics. This important day, it's about to remember my friends, our family, and my brothers that got massacred on that day. Of course, everyone in Israel wants peace, wants the war to be ended, but I'm not here to talk about what is going on today.
Okay. I won't press you on that, but as a soldier, I don't imagine... You can tell me. The fighting has to come to an end at some point, doesn't it, for there to be peace in the region? And we're closer now than at any point for quite a long time for there to be an agreement, and surely you must want to see that happen.
I think me, my friends, and the country need to do anything to bring the hostages back. That's the first thing priority, and we will do anything that will be happening as soon as possible.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that those talks will be able to achieve that. When was the last time that you were called up? Because obviously there was a recall of reservists to go back to fight.
I was called up a lot of time in the past 2 years, but I think today we are talking about the memories of 7 October. And I don't want to talk about my other time part in the army.
Okay. And when you are, I mean, on today, not just today, it must be every day that you think about that. How do you reflect on that moment when you got that call? I mean, what were you doing when it was early in the morning? I presume you were at home, maybe having breakfast with your family.
So in that morning, I didn't think even. And not only me, also my friends, we got a call, and it was my instincts. That's what I was trained for. And I got a phone call, I went home, take my backpack, went to base, and went to do our mission. We didn't think, even when we've been in Kfar Aza, in the war zone, it was a big chaos. We didn't have time to think. What was in my head is the civilians that suffering and their family torn down in seconds. And we needed to go fast as possible to save their lives. We didn't have time to think. Only after, and not even a week after, only a few months after, it took time to process. Until now, we're still processing, and it will be part of me all my life.
Which is the great tragedy of war, of course. 1,200 people killed. There are still hostages being held there, and tens of thousands killed across the border. Do you think about the loss of life across the border as well, and the deaths that have occurred there as a result of this war?
Of course, any death of civilians and innocent people, kids, women, men, everyone, I don't like it. But I will do anything to protect my country. I will do anything to protect me and my family. I'm sad about civilians getting killed, but that's on Hamas, not on the IDF. And that's Hamas' choice to fight from behind civilians. We will do anything to avoid that, but unfortunately, in war, if you look at history, in every war, civilians get killed.
And that's the tragedy of war, and the civilians want no part of this as war as much as I'm sure that you say you do. Right? Jonathan, Abba, thank you for your time.
Can I give you one message I want the world to know?
Okay.
Even in our darkest moments, we held into our humanity. We're not driving by hate, we're driving by love, compassion, and the will to protect life and save life. And that's what I want the world to know about Israel, about my generation, and about the young people in Israel.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
No, we appreciate you coming, Jonathan, as we mark this moment, this sad moment, 2 years on from the war, where thousands of people have been killed as a result of the violence. Thank you for being with us. All right, stay with us here on the Breakfast programme.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane. I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello, welcome back to Breakfast. Now, the Met Police have arrested 46 people after disrupting a crime ring suspected of smuggling tens of thousands of stolen phones to China. Now, the force launched Operation Echo Steep. It was last year, and this was after a box containing around 1,000 iPhones, almost all of which had been stolen, was found at a warehouse near Heathrow Airport. Huge story, this one. Rachel's been keeping across it for us. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, Rachel, about, you know, you've had your phone stolen out of your hand. My sister did early last year. It happens a lot. But finally, the Met Police, they've really got a coup on this one. It's a huge gang that they've smashed, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly their impression here. They say they've disrupted an international network that is suspected of smuggling up to 40,000 stolen phones from the UK to China within the last year. And to put that into context, that's thought to be some 40%, maybe up to half of the total number of phones stolen in London in the space of 12 months,
Huge.
Which is a massive organisation, as you say, a massive coup from the Metropolitan Police. It's the biggest operation of its kind into phone theft, as far as we can see, that's ever been launched by a police force in the UK. And fascinatingly, you said it started last December with this box of around 1,000 iPhones or phones that were found near Heathrow Airport. That was actually, it seems, only discovered by one woman who tracked her stolen phone to that warehouse.
Wow,
it was found within, it was found within this box, and obviously that was the key to unlocking a months-long investigation by the police with a huge number of arrests being carried out. We're looking obviously at some of the footage, both of the police arrests. There were weeks of crackdowns, huge number of operations and arrests as they gather evidence over a huge amount of time, whether it was forensic evidence on these parcels that were meant to be shipped abroad, obviously tracking individuals, and we've seen also in some of the images being played how easy it is to steal these phones, snatched out of people's hand in a blink of an eye, and obviously they can be sold abroad for a huge profit.
Certainly can.
Yeah, OK.
All right, Rachel,
thank you.
Thank you for that. OK. Well, let's take a look at the weather. The next couple of weeks look relatively settled, although there'll be strong winds and rain at times, mainly over northern and western parts. It's mild, breezy and cloudy, with patchy rain running from the southwest of Ireland into much of Scotland. Elsewhere, it's going to be mostly dry, but the southwest of Britain has a few drizzly outbreaks. Northwestern England and the southeastern parts of both Northern Ireland and Ireland will see rain later this morning, while northern Scotland and the northwest of Ireland are going to brighten up. Most other places are going to be dry, with the sunny spell developing. Temperatures look around average, but expect a chilly breeze. Scotland, Northern Ireland and Ireland will dry up a bit later, apart from a few showers in the north, while northern Wales and northern England will see patchy rain moving in. That is going to clear south overnight, reaching a line from Cornwall to Norfolk by morning. Clearer skies will follow, and that's going to bring patchy fog and a ground frost in places. On to Wednesday now. It looks mostly dry and sunny, but the south of England was going to be dull and damp for a time. The northwest of Scotland, though, can expect some showers. I mean, that weather seems about right for the time of year, doesn't it?
I think so.
Leaves are falling, it looks all right out there. Now, let's show you these pictures of whales after coming back from the brink of extinction. The southern right whale being found in greater numbers off the coast of Argentina in Patagonia. Well, Peninsula Valdez is home to the endangered population of these southern right whales. The species was nearly exterminated by hunting in the last century, but conservation efforts have meant that numbers have slowly recovered to around 5,000 whales that are found around the peninsula today.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? The last time, I'm going to seriously name drop here.
Go ahead.
The last time I was interviewing Sir David Attenborough.
Oh, that's nice.
He said there's so much in the deep ocean that we don't know, particularly about species, and it's a fascinating...
It is. I mean, the whales were hunted to near extinction for the oil, weren't they, for a long period of time, which is just incredible to think that we're having to kill these mammals to light our cities for about 100 or so years. You got a story about animals as well, haven't you?
Yes,
Yes, and finally, it's an and finally story. Pine martens have been released in Exmoor National Park. It's the first time it's happened in 100 years, which is a good thing. The animals, which are about the size of a small cat.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't think I knew what a pine marten was until you said that sentence.
There's a little picture coming up. You'll see the little fella. They're from the same family as weasels and otters, and they've been relocated to one of the greatest places on Earth, the Scottish Highlands. A perfect habitat for these types of creatures to explore and be happy.
With that, indeed. All right, then, thank you so much for that. Well, do stay with us, of course, because we will have all of the day's top stories coming after this short break. Leah will be back with us, of course, as well as Mario, our political correspondent. Do stay with us.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Hello, good morning. It is 9 a.m. A second day of indirect peace talks between Hamas and Israel are underway, but bombs continue to fall 2 years on from the October the 7th attacks.
Here, the Prime Minister denounces plans for pro-Palestinian protests set today as un-British.
Plus, how police smashed the crime gang responsible for extorting almost half the phones stolen on London streets.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of October. 2 years of devastating conflict after a day that destroyed lives and tore the Middle East apart.
They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home.
Well, this is the site of the Nova Music Festival, one of the sites attacked on October the 7th in 2023. 325 people who were at the festival did not return home. Their loved ones have gone there to remember them. Also ahead this hour, the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick defends comments that he made about not seeing a white face while in Birmingham and says we need a debate about integration. And UEFA has agreed to let Barcelona and AC Milan play league games abroad. Could English clubs be next? Well, today is exactly 2 years since the October the 7th attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed, 251 people taken hostage when Hamas fighters broke out of Gaza and attacked Israel. Since then, tens of thousands of Palestinians and hundreds of Israeli soldiers have died in a war that has torn the entire region apart. Well, this is the Nova Music Festival 2 years on from that morning. Relatives have gathered there. You can see the pictures of those that have died to pay tribute to their lost loved ones. Well, our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons has our top story this morning.
Robert Lifschitz loved his family, his home and his piano. But then came October the 7th, when he was taken. His home was burnt and his family was torn apart, the day when everything changed.
The whole kibbutz is waking up every morning to the 7th of October. This is Oded Lifschitz's house, my father-in-law's house. He is...
For Rita Lifschitz, the memories still ring so loudly. Her beloved father-in-law, Oded, lived here on Kibbutz Niroz. He was taken hostage on October 7th and held in Gaza, the land you can see from his window. This small kibbutz was overrun. More than 500 fighters came here. Oded and his wife Yocheved hid in their bomb shelter.
Our bomb shelter rooms are made for rockets, not for terror. They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side. These are the two beds, and this is hurting the heart to see that that is what is left from a couple that's been living together for over 60 years.
Yocheved was released after 16 days. Oded's body was returned earlier this year. More than a quarter of the people in this kibbutz were either killed or taken hostage. Rita was out of the kibbutz when the attackers arrived. When she came home, she was met by devastation. This is her best friend's home. Itzhak was shot, taken hostage, and later died. At the back of the home, the strong room where Itzhak took shelter. His blood is still on the floor and on the walls. Time is standing still here. The people in this kibbutz lived in the shadow of Gaza. It is there, always on the horizon. This is the view going the other way. The tents are in Gaza, the chimneys are in Israel. Across Gaza, more than 67,000 people have been killed since the October 7th attacks. A UN commission has described the war as a genocide. Saba used to live just over the border from Rita's kibbutz, but she's had to move 13 times since the war began. Saba once lived in a grand house with the trappings of wealth and success. But the last time she saw her home, it had just been bombed.
Personally, I long to go back to the ruins of my house, to sit among the rubble, simply to be there. Even that would be better than this life. At least then I might find a little peace.
But more recently came news. Her home had been targeted once more, And since these photos were taken, it's been targeted again.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home. Your spirit leaves you.
For Saba, this war is not just about what happened on October the 7th, not even about Hamas. It's about generations of struggle and anger, about feeling that Israel is oppressing the Palestinian people.
We are exhausted, broken by what has been done to us. October 7 was just one day, but for us, it has felt like living through hundreds of October 7ths.
In wars, people suffer, not just those who are killed and injured, but those who shoulder the burden of misery. In Gaza and in Israel, the scars caused by October the 7th run deep, and who knows if they will ever truly heal. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
We'll have more coverage, of course, from Gaza and Israel throughout the day. Now here, the Prime Minister has condemned plans for some universities to hold pro-Palestinian protests. He's called them un-British. Our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, is here with us. Mari, morning to you. So, Keir Starmer used an op-ed in The Times to describe these protests as such.
Yeah, exactly. He said it would be un-British, and he talked about how it would potentially be used by some as a despicable excuse to attack British Jews. He's trying to appeal to people's empathy and humanity and say, you know, they have no problem with people's right to protest, but perhaps think again about doing it today. Not only is it the 2-year anniversary of October the 7th and that massacre of Jewish life in Israel, but also, of course, it's only a matter of days since the terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester on UK soil. And so the Prime Minister is trying to say that actually, as a country, it is un-British to have so little respect for others. And he actually starts the op-ed by saying that actually, in general, as a society and as a country, we have been too indifferent when it comes to anti-Semitism, and that it has permeated our whole society. So he actually talks to a wider malaise, really, in the UK, in terms of the amount of anti-Semitism we are seeing in our streets and our lives and kind of everywhere. You were speaking to the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, about this, and obviously being an Education Secretary, she was talking about liaising with Vice-Chancellors of universities and her concerns around those who might be protesting at universities today. We can have a listen to how she kind of justifies and explains the government's position and also what she wants the police to do.
Given the deep trauma that was experienced on October the 7th, the worst loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, and especially in light of what we saw last week in Manchester, my message is that now isn't the time for protests of that kind. And anyone, of course, taking part in a protest must always ensure what they do is lawful, and the police will not hesitate to act should that overstep the mark.
So you can see Bridget Phillipson echoing the same language as the Prime Minister, and the government message this morning is please don't go out to protest, please have some respect. The difficulty, of course, is the argument on the other side is that actually, you know, tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza, and at the same time, people have the right to protest if they feel that they can't stand by and watch that happen. And so it is a bit politically contentious. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, has been talking this morning about it, and she's accused the Labour Party really of recognising a Palestinian state as rewarding terrorists and bringing that into her message on Today of all days. And then you're also speaking to Robert Jenrick, who's saying he thought it would be a disgrace for people to be protesting. So there are different areas and different ways that language is being used in politics when it comes to protests today.
Absolutely. All right, Maria, thank you for that for now. Well, the Shadow Justice Secretary, as was mentioned there, Robert Jenrick, has had to defend other comments that he made earlier this year when he said he hadn't seen another white face while he was in Handsworth in Birmingham for about 90 minutes. He says that means we need a debate about integration. Well, we'll speak to our political correspondent Amanda Acass, who's at Tory party conference in Manchester. But first, let's just hear what Jenrick had to say back in March.
The other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives.
Well, that was Robert Jenrick speaking in March. Now, Amanda joins us as promised from Manchester. Amanda, great to have you with us. So, put that to Robert Jenrick, and he said he didn't resolve from those comments.
Yes, indeed. If anything, he really doubled down on what he had to say earlier this year. He defended his comments, saying it was important to have a debate about integration, and there are real dangers to society if we aren't able to discuss that in public and if integration doesn't happen. And he really brushed off criticism from, for example, Andy Street, for many years mayor of the West Midlands, who said he was wrong, insisting he's someone who's from the West Midlands, from Wolverhampton himself, and it's comments that he stands by. He also dismissed suggestions that his words would be seized on by the far right, by racists, organisations who do not want to see greater diversity in this country, instead saying, well, no, it's very important for us to have this kind of debate. And then he went even further, and I think in what will perhaps be one of the most controversial elements of this, in linking a failure with integration with what happened in the attack on the synagogue last week. Let's have a listen.
There are real dangers. If we don't live in a well-integrated community, then this can lead to serious, serious challenges. Look, just the other day here in Manchester, we saw a man who had lived in this country for 30 years, but was clearly not integrated into our society, clearly did not share British values, committing an appalling terrorist attack by going to a synagogue and killing British Jews. That is at the extreme level where failures of integration lead. And that's why we've got to have a debate about this and not have it shut down whenever anyone puts their head above the parapet and talks about it publicly.
Now, this comes at the start of what's being billed as Law and Order Day at the Tory party conference. Robert Jenrick and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, will be making speeches, and they've got a number of high-profile, fairly punchy announcements, which, again, will be quite controversial, about abolishing the Sentencing Council, saying they're going to end two-tier justice, which follows up a controversy earlier in this year when the Sentencing Council suggested that judges should produce reports when sentencing minority groups or women, because often there were disproportionately shorter sentences perceived to have been given to white men. The Tories claim that that is discrimination against white men, but that's already something that's been overridden by the then Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. But clearly they want to get into that row once again, and also saying they're going to cut out the rot in the judiciary and create greater powers for ministers to get rid of what they describe as activist judges. Principally, it sounds like judges who have previously worked for charities which campaign for open borders. Again, this is something which has caused a lot of debate, seen as a bit of an attack on the independence of judiciary. Clearly, the Tories are under real pressure from Reform. We've seen a series of 11 councillors from Reform from the Tories defecting to Reform this morning, so that's clearly what's going on here.
OK, Amanda, for now, from Manchester, thank you for that. Of course, more from you and team throughout the day at conference. Well, let's go back now to Israel, 2 years on from the Hamas attacks of the 7th of October. Our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, is in southern Israel and joins us now live. Alex, just tell us where you are and what is being marked at that point where you are today.
I'm in a place called Raim, very close to the Gaza border. This is where the Nova Festival was taking place on October the 7th. You can see behind me, this is a memorial to the people who were murdered here. All of these are photographs of those people. They were in attendance, dancing that morning when the rocket barrages first started from Gaza. There's a short biography of each person, and around you can see these are family and friends who've come to pay their respects. It goes without saying that the atmosphere here is very subdued. This is a difficult day for Israel. This is a difficult day for Israelis. But it was at about 6:30 in the morning the first rocket barrages started. That's the time that people first understood something was happening. There was hardly any military here at all. I've spoken to families of survivors. I've spoken to survivors this morning. They told me that they were told to find cover. Many of them sought shelter around here, but what they didn't know was about to happen at that time was the mass infiltration of Hamas militants. Many of those people were gunned down here or not far. Others managed to get in cars, escape, find shelter on some of the roads, but those roads became cut off. None of the Israeli military could get to them, and they were gunned down as well. But for the families, this day is really, really difficult. So hard to process what happened. And of course, because the war hasn't ended, there are still hostages, people being held in captivity in Gaza. They say that the last 2 years has really just been a period of psychological torture because there is no resolution at all. And then, of course, there's the other side of the story. This is not just the anniversary of October the 7th, it's also the 2-year anniversary of the military campaign. What's happened to Gaza in all that time? The place has been decimated, neighborhoods, towns, cities inside Gaza completely demolished by the war, and also the number of people killed as well as a result of the Israeli military campaign. Nearly 70,000 according to official figures from the Gaza Health Ministry. The actual number may be much higher. That said, there is a sense of optimism on both sides that there may be a breakthrough. People are watching very closely the negotiations going on in Egypt. The signs there, we are told, are positive. They are hoping that a ceasefire may come very soon and all of the hostages will be returned home.
Indeed. All right, Alex, for now, at the site of the Nova Music Festival, thank you for that. We'll have more from Alex and team, of course, and the rest of our Sky News colleagues who are in the region as Israel marks 2 years since the Hamas attacks of the 7th of October. This is the rest of the site there at the Nova Music Festival, where thousands partygoers were celebrating before Hamas attacked. 325 of those young people who were there did not make it home following that attack. Of course, we're going to have the latest from the region and all the reaction to this day, 2 years on from those attacks, throughout the day here on Sky News. Stay with us.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with a name.
A story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, I am talking about...
No, but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it? And welcome back. Well, let's speak to a sporting hero. Really excited about this. Well, Rob is here, of course. But we're going to speak to one of Britain's most successful female Olympians. But may know that she's actually suffers from asthma for most of her life. And you wouldn't put Olympic, gold medalist and asthma together, but there she is. Welcome to the show, Dame Laura Kenny. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Any-time. I know you've got your hands full. We can't quite see that little one that's attached to you.
She's here.
There we go. Good morning, little one. Listen, Laura, as I said there, you've got, 5 gold medals, 1 silver, but you were born, weren't you, 6 weeks early. You had a collapsed lung. It was doctors who said, look, introduce Laura to cycling because it might help her lung capacity. Just give people that backstory.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I feel like one of the lucky ones in a way that, the doctors said to my parents she might grow up with asthma. And then my parents basically were totally on board with just trying to, shape the best that they could for my childhood. And yeah, they suggested it was actually swimming initially to help build my lung capacity. And then after that, obviously, after lots of different sports that I tried, cycling ended up being my thing. But yeah, like you say, you don't normally associate athletes with asthma. But yeah, I was one of the ones that have grown up with it. I think I was diagnosed when I was about 6 with it.
And Dame Laura, sorry, it's Kamali here as well. Thank you so much for joining us and good morning to you. So, and when you were competing at the top level, because as I said, it was news to me that you had asthma. You wouldn't be able to tell from your winning performances. Did you meet other athletes that had asthma as well? And is there a group of them that we don't know about who have these conditions that are still competing at the very top level?
Yeah, it's not uncommon, I guess, for athletes to have it. It's not something you really talk about between each other, I suppose, which actually, in a way, is why I guess I'm here trying to speak to you, because I am actually an ambassador at the minute for Chiesi, who have got a Look Beyond the Bias campaign. And that is basically taking the stigma away from any sort of respiratory disease, because like you say, you're not associating me because I'm an athlete with asthma, but then there'll be people in a workplace who will see it as a negative and they then won't go and get the help that they need. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, just because you think I haven't got it doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't. And if someone is sat there thinking, I think I've got something, wrong with my health, then just speak about it. That is the best thing that you can do. You can be as open as you can and forget about the stigma behind lots of these respiratory diseases.
And is it overcoming that concern that a coach might use it as a reason not to select you, anything that could be seen as perhaps impacting performance?
Yes, and to be honest, I think that's in every walk of life. I think people think that their health issues are their fault, and that's just not the case. Like, you can't help, like for me, for example, I can't help that I was born with asthma. There'll be people born with lots of different diseases. It is not your fault. And the worst thing you can do is keep it to yourself and actually not get the help that you need.
Yeah, really important campaign, Laura, isn't it? But I guess what we're all wondering is what's next for you, apart from looking after that little one that will keep you very, very busy, I'm sure.
Oh, honestly, my life. I wish someone warned me that 3 kids was utter chaos compared to 2 kids. But to be honest, at the minute, honestly, I am trying absolutely everything. I'm saying yes to things that I would never normally say yes to. And I feel at the minute my most important role is actually being the president of Team England, because the Commonwealth Games is just next year.
Yeah. Do you still get out on the bike?
I very much try to, but I'm getting 2 hours to actually go out in my day is slim to none at the minute.
No, it's definitely hard, as parents on this panel can attest to getting time to yourself. Well, look, Dame Laura, it's really good to speak with you. All the best with the campaign and all the best to that little one as well, who is just there at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for being with us, Dame Laura. Best to you and your family.
Thank you.
I just reminded me as well, David Beckham had asthma. I remember seeing those pictures. I had a look online. He used an inhaler during a a game back in 2009.
But it's incredible, isn't it, how sport can help so many different types of conditions. Like Adam Peaty, I remember his family saying when he was like 5, he would trip over, his balance was terrible. And they put him in gymnastics, and then obviously went onto the pool.
Just last night, I was at a sports event where Gary Mabbutt was being referenced, and he played with diabetes. Yeah, still went on to captain Tottenham to beat Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup final during his career.
Let's bring up Forest, Rob. What are you here for? Tell us about it. Rob Harris, our sports correspondent, is here with us, and I think this is all about European teams playing way away from Europe, right?
Yeah, if you think back about 20 years ago, there was an attempt to take Premier League games abroad, have an extra 39th game in the season played overseas. There was complete outrage, a backlash from fans and politicians. Well, elsewhere, this is being pursued. In Spain, they're taking or trying to take a La Liga game to Miami, Villarreal against Barcelona, and in Italy, a Serie A game, Como against Milan, to Perth, Australia. Now, it was facing a lot of legal challenges, but then a landmark decision yesterday from UEFA's executive committee, they said reluctantly they're allowing them to take these games overseas.
And what's the basis behind, apart from the clubs, selling more shirts to other fans? I mean, what else is the reasons to why La Liga and Serie A want to go?
Well, in part, it's trying to take on the power financially of the Premier League. Now, the reason they're saying in Serie A they need to do it is because the Winter Olympics are in Milan, so the San Siro isn't available. La Liga's trying to grow in the US. The reason why they're reluctantly agreeing UEFA is they say that on a world level, the FIFA rules don't effectively allow them to block it. But it's a sign of all the complicated football politics because UEFA, who are organising the Champions League, are in partnership with the same commercial entity that's taking these games overseas.
Yeah, I've been really interested in the fan reaction to it because I was talking to Kamali earlier about, particularly in Europe, local community in teams is really, really important, and it risks isolating a core fan base, essentially.
Yes, and that's why the football regulator, which is being introduced here, would potentially be able to block, say, the Premier League taking games overseas. But if you've got a majority of Premier League owners who advocate for it, it could very easily force the change. But I think there's such an opposition from fans here, losing that connection to the local community. Do clubs fund fans going to these games if they're thousands of miles away? And there's a competitive distortion as well to the league if you effectively lose a home game because you're playing it in another country.
It definitely is. It's lots to talk about. I don't think we'll see in the Premier League later, but good luck to those leagues, I guess, who are doing it. Rob, good to see you as always. Thanks so much for that. Morning to you. All right, still to come on The Breakfast Show. We'll have more from the Middle East as Israel remembers 2 years on from October 7th. Hello there, and welcome back to The Breakfast Programme. Coming up, we're going to hear from a British-Israeli filmmaker whose parents were taken hostage on the 7th of October 2023.
Today marks exactly 2 years since the October 7th attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage when Hamas fighters broke out of Gaza and attacked Israel. Well, this is the scene this morning at the site of the Nova Music Festival. Relatives of those killed are gathering to pay tribute on the anniversary. And then in Gaza, there's been at least 2 explosions this morning and smoke can be seen rising on the skyline. A second day of talks in Egypt is taking place between Israel and Hamas to free the remaining hostages and end the war. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he's hopeful that progress is being made.
Now, Sharon Lifschitz's mother, Yocheved, was one of the 251 Israelis taken hostage on that day. Now, she was released alive, but sadly her father, Oded, was killed. His body was returned early this year. Well, I'm very pleased to say that Sharon joins us now this morning. Good morning to you, Sharon, on what must be an incredibly difficult day for you and your family. Thank you for being with us. I wonder if you can take us back to that day 2 years ago when you first heard the news.
Well, it unfolded over the whole day. So at the beginning, we just knew that there was the missiles, and then we knew that near Oz, the last time my parents were contacted, my father said that he could hear Arabic. He also said the army will be here in a minute. But the army took 7 hours to come. And in those 7 hours, hundreds of terrorists and civilians marched on the kibbutz and killed dozens of people, looted, and took 83 hostages. Some of them managed to run. Some of them were killed on the way to Gaza Strip.
Now, your parents were in the kibbutz there, right by the border. We often hear that Israeli families who live that close by have sort of safe rooms. Did your parents have anything like that? What was their plan of escape? But what was their plan?
So, actually, their bedroom was the safe room, and it's safe for missiles. It has a metal door, but it doesn't have a lock on it, so that it's able to open if a bomb falls. The result of that was that my father was holding the door. My father was 83 and frail. He was holding the door. He was shot through the door, and seconds after that, 5 terrorists were in the room. They took my mom. She saw my dad lying unconscious. That's the last time she saw him.
They took your mother into Gaza. When did you, as a family, get any detail as to sort of where she was being held, or did you not get any detail of where she was being held until she was released?
I was sure she died. I did not believe she survived.
So there was just no information?
There was no information. We knew from other hostages what had happened, people that managed to escape after they were taken hostage before they reached Gaza. But it was on the 21st, so almost 2 weeks later, that Hamas released a telegram saying that they wanted to release my mom and Nurit Cooper. And at that point, we thought, OK, she's alive. 2 days later, she was released.
Now, your father's... Was his body taken then into Gaza? He was taken...
My father survived.
We didn't
know that
being shot
until the hostages came in the first deal. My father was unconscious. My mum thought he was dead, but he survived, and he survived in Gaza for 3 weeks or so before he was killed.
Sharon, I want to play the picture of your mother's release, if we can. I think we've got them here. And I remember this. I remember this moment, and obviously for you, this must have been the moment that you were waiting for. Can you take us back to this moment, where you guys were? Had you already seen Mum by this stage, or was this...
I was in London when she was released on the way to the airport. I saw her being released on CNN together with the rest of the world, and then took the night flight and arrived at 5 a.m. in the morning in the hospital. And my mom just fallen asleep an hour before, and when I entered the room, she was asleep.
Glad you're all with her, and we can see you together there. Why don't you tell us about your father as well? He was a journalist and a campaigner.
My father and my mother moved to Nir Oz to build a new community on the border. They really believed in peace among nations and believed in the ideal of Israel and of making peace with our neighbors. My father had many friends in Gaza, been there many, many times, and he campaigned for reconciliation and peace all his life. Drove Palestinians to hospitals in his retirement. He really believed in what we all still believe, that there is an alternative to this endless war.
Mm-hmm. And that alternative is?
Is long-term agreement, building a new generation, building bridges. It's a lot of work making peace, but we can do it.
What's your feeling today, then? Am I right in thinking that you feel like it's closer now than we have been for such a long time for there being peace? I did hear the family of someone who was being held on the radio this morning as I was driving in, saying that she doesn't want to have that hope in her just yet, but she does feel like it's really close.
I think, there's talking about all the hostages coming back this week. Our heart soars with that, but we have seen many other moments at which things almost happened and then failed. Everybody that are part of this, President Trump, the British government, everyone must push on both sides, not let them wriggle out of it. It's now or never. We need to get all the hostages. We need to end this war. We need a better future.
Agree on that. Sharon Lifschitz, thank you very much for being with us. My best to your mum and the rest of your family. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Today.
OK, let's bring in Jan Egeland, Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council now. Thanks so much for being with us today, Jan. Just to start with, your reflections today.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Sharon, who you just interviewed. We hope this is a moment, this 2-year marking of a horrific act of terror in Israel, could be the day where we get an agreement on release of the remaining hostages and also the bodies being returned home. The detainees will be released. There are 1,700 that have been detained without law and justice on the Israeli side, and that we get a humanitarian agreement. We're ready to help a starving Gaza, which is in famine, but we need then an agreement. So the pressure on both parties should be overwhelming now, led by the United States and the Gulf countries, but we should all help in this.
From a humanitarian position, Jan, how close do you think we are to a potential ceasefire?
I think we're very close. To agree on a humanitarian deal for access over the crossing points, all of them, with better and more efficient screening methods, with a green light for all of us, the organizations who are on the ground in Gaza, to come in at scale, because we're blocked at the moment. All of that is easy. It's logistics. It's also logistics to have the release of the hostages and the detainees. The Red Cross can do that. The other things, which is the exact separation of forces, the disarming of Hamas, the political agreement for the future of Gaza and how it should be governed, and the future for the Palestinian self-rule, nationhood, much more difficult. If the two are tied, I fear that the easy agreements will still be delayed, and even more people will starve and die and be bombed to pieces in Gaza in a futile fight that has no end.
Jan, how would you describe the reality on the ground today through your staff's eyes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pity Sky News and no other journalists can go there, no diplomats, no researchers, no monitors. It's really us humanitarian workers only which is there in the crossfire with the civilian population. Because I've been there twice since 7th of October, 2 years ago. And you have to be there to understand the feeling of hopelessness, of fear every day, every night, for hundreds and hundreds of days and nights. Parents not being able to care for their children, not being able to feed their children, and not being able to protect their children. 10, 20,000 children have been killed. It's beyond belief. 4 out of 5 homes have been destroyed or damaged. 4 out of 5 homes. Imagine London, huh? This is far beyond the Blitz. I mean, this is this was not a targeted anti-terror operation. This was the destruction of all of urban Gaza.
And Jan, just to wrap, if you could speak directly to world leaders marking this anniversary, what one action do you think that would change the situation for civilians right now?
I think the message of today is release the hostages who have suffered for 2 years unconditionally now. Release the detainees so they can come back to their families now. And agree on the humanitarian agreement and the ceasefire now, and then have maximum pressure so that all of these other elements of the good 20-point plan can be implemented. It's enough now. 2 years of continuous destruction and suffering can end, and it can end now, but there must be an enormous effort now. And we hope that the UK and others will help push. We in NRC sent a letter to all of the major European countries with details on how a humanitarian agreement can be implemented to give content to the point 7 and 8 in Trump's plan.
OK, we'll leave it there. Jan Egeland, Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're looking here once again at the site of the Nova Music Festival on the border between Israel and Gaza, where thousands of people were celebrating through the night prior to that Hamas attack that began there about 6:30. Thousands there dancing and celebrating with friends and family. 325 of those people who were at the festival, the Nova Festival, did not return homes to their families. Well, their friends and relatives have come to the site today, 2 years on from that attack. You can see them there and also see the pictures of those who lost their lives. We'll have more coverage from the region throughout the day here on Sky News. But for now, we're going to take a short break.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Hello there and welcome back. Now, the Metropolitan Police say they've arrested 46 people after disrupting a crime ring suspected of smuggling tens of thousands of stolen phones to China.
Well, the force launched Operation Echo Steep last year after a box containing around 1,000 iPhones, almost all of which had been stolen, was found at a warehouse near Heathrow Airport. Well, Rachel Venables has been digging into this story. Mari is here. We're going to talk politics in a moment. But in particular with this story, Mari, it's a huge coup for the Metropolitan Police. This was a gang really running riot in London.
Well, this is certainly what the Metropolitan Police assume, and this is the way that they've been operating for a number of months with this huge operation, the biggest of its kind, actually, throughout, I think, that we've ever seen in the UK into phone theft. And it looks as though the Metropolitan Police put a series of very experienced detectives on the case. You mentioned the name of the operation, Echo Steep. It was the sort of officers who usually are tackling with things like drug smuggling and, robberies. But once they found this box in a warehouse in December filled with stolen phones, hundreds and hundreds of them, I think they realised they had the potential to get access to a serious organised crime group. And we know that around 46 arrests have been carried out. We're looking at some of the footage now. And essentially the Metropolitan Police believe these suspects were involved in an organisation that was shipping tens of thousands of phones to China and around the world that had been snatched out of people's hands, whether Londoners, whether people visiting tourists to the capital. And just to put the numbers into context, they think that in the past year, this organisation or these individuals have been responsible for some 40,000 phones being sent to China. That's thought to be around 40% of the total number of these devices actually stolen in the capital.
It's interesting, isn't it, Rachel, because it seems as if many people will have experienced phone theft, I'm sure, that those were random acts. But judging by this, it seems as if it was an organised thing in some respects, certainly with these guys. But with these police investigations, they need a bit of luck, don't they? And they got a bit of luck in being able to find this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really interesting that that's what sparked it, because so many people's experience of when they do find their phone stolen is that the numbers are just so intense, the police can't really do anything about it. But it is being reported in some of the outlets today that actually what led to this in the first place was somebody tracking their phone down to that warehouse, to that box, amongst around 800 or 900 other devices, and that's what sparked it. But obviously the Metropolitan Police saw that as an opportunity. They used things like forensic evidence and stuff to work out other parcels similarly, and once they started arresting individuals, they found more devices and properties connected to them, and the whole thing seems to have spiralled.
And they're worth a load more, aren't they, in China? That's the thing. That's why they're so valuable to these thieves. And
Exactly. And of course, you can snatch them in an instant. I mean, Mari, you're just sat here with your phone in your hand.
This is
the road. She's got the road. Exactly.
It's
but you just walk down the street and people are on their phones, quite rightly. They're speaking to people, they're using them, they're texting, they're checking directions. It's so easy in a matter of seconds to snatch these devices. Street thieves, the police were finding, were being paid up to £300 per handset stolen. Wow. Okay. And then abroad, they could be sold for up to $5,000.
Yikes. OK, so you can see how it was organised. Quick poll, then, who's had a phone?
I haven't. My sister did earlier this year.
My cousin had one stolen out of his hand.
I had two stolen. I got one of them back from my bag and my pocket. The bag I got back because I asked him to give it back to me and he did.
Well done.
Wow.
Brave.
Yeah. And the other one I didn't realise until it was too late. So, yeah.
Mari's holding onto her phone for dear life, so I know you haven't had a phone taken, have you?
I have. It was a long time ago. It's about 10 years ago.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's really scary. You can see it as well. I don't know if it was... I've seen it happen.
I've seen it, yeah. I've seen it where there's two on a bike and one does the driving and one does the snatching. It's a serious operation.
It really is. They know what they're doing, unfortunately, but they've been busted in this instance. Thank you very much for that, Rachel. Well, Mari's joined as our political correspondent because you've got a bit of breaking news to bring us. Tory party conference continues to give.
Well, exactly, although it's really not good news for the Conservatives. So we've had 14 defections of councillors, Conservative councillors, moving to the Reform Party this morning alone. Now, this
that sounds like a big number, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this has clearly been timed to, happen during Conservative Party conference. And so we've got a situation where all of these local councillors are all saying, actually, it's time to go to Reform, the Tories are dead. What is interesting is one of the people who have defected, they actually used to work for Richard Holden. Richard Holden used to be Tory party chairman. He actually ended up running down south to a seat during the election because he was about to lose his seat. He won by about 30 votes or something. Yeah, there were several recounts. But anyway, that's beside the point. But 14 so far. And what's really interesting as well is Kemi Badenoch has been talking about this and people have been asking her, hold on a second, everyone's leaving you. Clearly, that's a demonstration that you don't believe in your leadership. And she said, actually, what we're seeing, what we're doing is shedding a lot of baggage of the last 14 years. And then she's also said just last year we had MPs jumping to Labour because Labour was doing well. Now they're not doing so well. There are some people who leave because all they want to do is win elections. They don't know what they're winning the elections for. And then she says, we're making it very clear what we're doing. This for. It is for the people of the United Kingdom. We want to give them a stronger economy. We want to give them stronger borders. And basically what she's saying is we need people in our party who are there for the right reasons. And what she's saying is people who jump ship, they're just going somewhere where they think they can keep their seat rather than focusing on what they genuinely, truly believe in politically.
I mean, it's typically bullish from her, right? But we've seen pictures of the hall being half full. We're now seeing people leaving them. I mean, the numbers don't lie, the images don't lie. The fact that 14 have decided to leave this morning tells its own story.
Absolutely. The Conservative Party are in an incredibly weak position right now. They would, to an extent, admit it. The question is, can they recover? And at the moment, we are seeing defections from councils. We are also seeing defections of MPs, sitting MPs, former MPs. And the question really is, in the next 12 to 18 months, Kemi Badenoch is going to be coming under further and further scrutiny as to whether she can at least just hang on to what they've got. I mean, Tory MPs talked to you off the record saying that they are genuinely preparing to be down to 30 seats at the next general election, and they're trying to figure out who is going to be left out of the 120 odd that they've got right now. I mean, they genuinely do think it is quite apocalyptic. So Kemi's got a big job on her hands. What she believes is her saving grace is that over time scrutiny will undo some of Reform's plans, and she believes that Labour's its own worst enemy. And so she thinks that actually if they can bide their time and be reasonable and sensible, that actually people will start to come back to the Conservatives when they start to see chaos on both sides. That's her plan.
Do people want reasonable and sensible in 2025? I'm not sure. If you look around the world at other politicians that are doing really well, not at least in this own country as well. All right, Mari, for now, thank you for that. But we've got a little political bit of breaking news to bring you actually as well. It's coming from the Lib Dems, who've accused Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who had on a little earlier, of having a Trumpian purge. It's part of Jenrick's plan. We're going to hear about more later when he gives his speech to get rid of a number of judges that he says are pro-migration. The Lib Dems claiming that is a Trumpian purge. When I put it to Jenrick that this would be politically appointed judge, he said that that would not be the case. But you can see the Lib Dems don't believe that for now. All right, well, do stay with us here on Sky News, and that's all from The Breakfasting. Thanks for being with us this morning. I'll have plenty more from Israel throughout the day.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.